Welcome to Creating Change. Hi, I'm Sharon Chapman, and this is the place to be if you're wanting to improve your health, your mobility, and ultimately your life so you'll move more, feel, and look better. Hello, and welcome to Creating Change. And we have a very big treat today, and we have one of my favorite people in terms of mentors in everyday movement, and that is Miss Mary Bond. She is an author of books and magazines, a speaker and a teacher, and what I consider a lifelong mover. And we want to welcome you to Creating Change, Mary. So welcome, Mary.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm delighted to be with you.
And I first was introduced to you, Mary, when you were one of our experts on our Diastasis Recti resolution curriculum that we wrote at Your Pregnant Core, and it was wonderful. It turned out to be quite a good moving curriculum that has helped many, many women. So we really thank you for that. But Mary's mission is to contribute to humanity's deeper embodiment. And Mary, a couple of the students has requested a little history, and when I emailed you and asked you if you would share that, I thought that would be a wonderful, wonderful thing, because I've seen many videos of you and nobody's really talked to you about your own personal history and your own journey through the body. So would you mind if we start at your youngest memory?
Oh, yeah. I think I was twirling a baton.
I was a baton twirler too. Cool.
I mean, the earliest memory is trying to do that, and I had little white marching boots, and it was all very exciting. I studied tap and ballet and all that, until I was about 12, and then I dropped it in favor of being in high school, and then I picked up dance again in college. Actually, after college, in my master's program, I went to UCLA dance department and got a degree in choreography, dance choreography.
And what led you down that road to do choreography?
Well, I always like to put dances together, make things up, and I wasn't a brilliant technician, and I was also tall, so in terms of being a professional dancer, I was, not really right for that. But I was interested in making dance. And also I was at a time in my life where I needed to be part of a community, and the dance department gave me that. So it gave me sort of a purpose, and it was 3 years that was quite a lot of fun. And then I was like, there I was with my master's degree in choreography, and what do you do with that? So you could go teach dance in a college, and I was offered some plum jobs, and somehow or another I didn't want to do it. I don't know why. I remember, actually, this is silly, but I had low back pain. Suddenly I was making this decision whether to go to the University of Maryland or Antioch, I think, or University of Massachusetts, far away from California, where I've always been. And so I threw an I Ching, and the I Ching counseled stillness and waiting. So I called them all up and said, I'm not coming. And at that point, I met Ida Rolf, Dr. Ida Rolf, who was the founder of Structural Integration. And I heard her talk, and she blew my mind, because she was talking about how the body relates to gravity. And my ballet teacher at the time, a woman named Mia Slavenska, who was a famous Russian ballerina, she used to talk about gravity also. And so, when was this? This is like 1969. It was a long time ago. So the things that we're so aware of now were new then. The idea that the body could be affected by gravity was like unreasonable. nobody thought about that we were just as much architectural constructions. I mean, we're organisms, obviously, but we're also architectural. And so we're subject to the pull of gravity, just like a building is. This was big news.
What was Ida Rolf like? I mean, I know a lot of people that up in the Jackson Hole area that follow the myofascial release and are very familiar with her work. They speak so highly of her, but none of them have, of course, been around her. What was she like?
She was like a grandmother.
Oh,
I mean, she was like a kind of stern, but compassionate and amused. She was amused at us, all these hippies who flocked to her feet to try to learn, what she had to say and what she had to show us. And we had all received the work in our bodies, so we knew in our feeling body, what her type of manual therapy could do for a person. It could change your life, not just your physical life, but your emotional life as well. So we were very much enamored of her and her ideas. And she was, depending on who you were, for me, she was kind of bemused at me because I was at the time kind of meek, and she called me the little school teacher.
Why did she call you that? Just because
Well, I don't know. I don't know what was in her head, but she was right. At the time I hated it, but
but you are a teacher.
Exactly. She must have picked up on something.
The one thing that I love the most about you is that, and I'm 63, and I recognize that movement is a glorious thing. I mean, for me and my body, movement is, but you are one of the leading people who taught me how to move with joy. And well, that might sound a little odd, but I have found movement in my 50s and 60s so much more enjoyable. And I kind of feel like I know my body more. And I don't know if that just happens to be some kind of an awakening when you get into your 60s, but to go back to you were a hippie. Is that what?
Well, I mean, the whole crowd that circled around her. I mean, this all took place at Esalen.
Ah.
Okay, so a lot of us. I wasn't a hippie so much, but a lot of the other people were. And it was a hippie time,
Oh, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
I'm saying that generically. So anyway, I was trained by her. She never, I don't think, thought I would be much good. and in the beginning, I wasn't. I had pretty much I was pretty young,
But do you find that of all teachers? I know you have an impact on teachers, and we have many teachers that they feel very insecure about what they're doing. And, our comment is to please just keep touching, please keep educating yourself, please keep touching bodies, because we kind of feel that is really the key to teaching. And understanding what we do well, understanding what we don't do well. What kind of hurdles did you cross at that time when you were so young and wanting to go on and had this training by Ida?
Well, I honestly, I bumped up against my own psyche, and I was not equipped to interact with people at the depth that the work required. So something in me knew that, and I quit. I just stopped doing the work for, about 10 years, I think. I got married. I had a whole life experience. I had stepchildren. I suffered. I grew up, and I began to understand both myself and other people. And for me, that was the best thing I could have done in terms of coming back to the work eventually with uh, more of a self to both give and receive, because working with another person and with their body is a two-way street. You know,
Oh yeah.
it's a dialogue. It's not just something you do to them. So so yeah, I think growing up is really important.
Well, maturing. I mean, that's a real key. When I started looking at your history myself, I was amazed that you were a children's writer.
No, that's not me.
That's not you. Twins is not you.
No.
Then I have a different Mary Bond, because that surprised me that that particular book was out there with your name on it. And I went, wow, I questioned if it was a second Mary Bond, but
Yeah, there's about 50 or 60 of us on Facebook.
really,
Yeah, you know, if you search them, if you have to search
the,
to connect with me, you have to look for my picture.
and there's 123 Sharon Chapmans
Yes, there you go.
in the world, that is.
I just was on Goodreads. You know that Goodreads is a kind of a book sharing program where people share what they read, and authors can put up their work, you know, so people can know about it. So I just put up I have 3 books, and I put them all up there, and then they automatically put up any book that has the author's name, Mary Bond. So I had to delete about 4 that were like German, or, you know, they just definitely weren't me. Yeah. So anyway, no, I wasn't a children's author. I came back to Rolfing and was retrained by some of Ida's disciples. People, by that time she had passed away. And I really needed retraining because my hands were really not educated. You know, it's like I had matured, but my touch had not yet matured. So I needed to sort of start over. And luckily I had really good teachers at that time. And then I took a movement training. It's not commonly known that structural integration has a movement education sort of adjunctive curriculum. And it's really quite wonderful, or it has become quite wonderful. A lot of different people have participated in kind of extrapolating what Ida said about movement and turning it into something we could teach to our clients. So the movement awareness or sensory awareness part of Rolfing is, to me, the key to it being sustainable in somebody's life. Otherwise, it's just a series of 10 sessions that people check off and say, oh, I've been Rolfed, you know. And it doesn't necessarily, I want to say, stick, you know, unless the person has learned how to embody the changes. And helping someone embody those changes is an art. Because some people are already, when they come to you, they're already aware. You know this as a Pilates teacher. There are students who just feel what you're teaching.
Absolutely.
They appreciate it like that. And then they take it and you see the change in their bodies. And there are other people that are just like, what? You know, so
or that have done it for years and years and years and have never seen any kind of change.
Yeah. And so that not seeing the change is because whoever was teaching them didn't know how to find that place in them that could feel something differently. And that takes a great deal of patience and creativity and tricksterism. You know, you sometimes have to trick people into feeling themselves.
You know, when I have my Rolfing done from a gentleman out of northwestern Wyoming, I can't tell you the feelings I have. Most of the time, and I have a pelvic issue because I had a fusion in my lower lumbar area, and every time I have it, I weep heavily. And I mean, I can't describe that other than he says, you know, he keeps saying, you know, that a woman holds so much in her pelvis, and he goes down that particular path of trying to explain it to me, because when he does work on me, it's a very moving, a very releasing feeling for me.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the fact that have you always been tall?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes. Since, junior high school, when you go to cotillion, right?
yeah.
All these little peewees you have to dance with, and it's demoralizing.
I don't mean to laugh, but has that early on, as you were growing and maturing, did your height, the fact that you were so tall, affect your posture?
Oh, probably, yeah, sure. But I had an interesting experience not too long ago. A man got in touch with me, found me on Facebook. We had been American Field Service summer foreign exchange students. And we had a shipboard romance going from New York to Rotterdam. And then I went to Denmark, he went to Germany. And then after the summer, we didn't live too far apart. So we got together a few times to go to dances or football games or something. And then, it was too much for everybody's parents to keep driving us back and forth, and, plus we moved on. But anyway, this guy, probably 50 years later, he looks me up and
Wow.
wonders if I'm the Mary Bond that sent him the Danish sweater, which I was. And then he wrote me that he wanted to thank me for, I don't know how he worded it, but it had something to do with validating his beingness, even though he was short. He was shorter than I was.
Yeah.
And somehow or another, and I was like stunned, because I'm most of the time like, not wanting to be taller than the guy. But somehow I pulled it off, I guess, to where he felt good about himself.
But I think that's great if you know somebody that can make you feel taller, because I can relate to that. I'm only 5'2". So
Really?
well, maybe I look taller in the picture that we're seeing of one another, but no.
Well, I'm not that tall. I'm 5'8.5" now, but I used to be 5'9".
And I know you mentioned stepchildren. Were you around children a lot in that 10 years that you took off?
Yeah.
Did you?
That was really good.
One thing that we really have been dealing with and talking a lot about with my students is parental posture, in terms of, when you have a child and you're pregnant, you have a tendency to be more lordosis and the posture changes, then you have the baby, and then you are actually discovering that things have changed considerably in your body, and then you're constantly lifting an ever-changing load. And I was just wondering, did you have any of that experience with parental posture? And that's just kind of the way I describe the loading and the misbalance in the body.
I understand what you're talking about, but I didn't experience it that way, because at the time I had kind of left the whole body awareness movement part of myself behind in favor of being present in this very dysfunctional family. and so I was just mostly trying to survive. So I don't know what I was doing with my body, except I was running. I was a runner. But I understand what you're saying in terms of bending over and caring for someone, because I see this all the time, not just with mothers and fathers, but with nurses and teachers.
Oh, yes.
People who are focused on the welfare of the other person and putting themselves
at risk.
Yeah, at risk, yeah. And there are various ways of bending over, that people do, but I honestly don't know how to talk about that because, I mean, in an ideal world, which we are definitely not in.
Right.
Okay, let me go back to prehistory when we were hunter-gatherers. Okay, we had babies then too, right? But we had to be aware of our whole spatial environment all the time, because if we didn't, we would be eaten, you know? So we had to seek for our prey, but we had to not become prey.
Absolutely.
So our perception of the world had to be three-dimensional. We had to know what was behind us and below us and above us and to the side of us. And so that even if we were caring for a baby or, you know, okay, we would still have to be present in the world in a way that we don't now. Because now all we have to do is push buttons and turn knobs, and in order to, you know, live our lives, we get away with being focused like this all the time. We think we're getting away with it until we're old, and then suddenly we're all bent and crumpled up.
Well, that focus creates sameness. I mean, and you would think that that focus would help us, well, just the knowledge of that focus. But I think that we get so misguided in that focus that we just stop moving. I talk with more men and women about this because of just the high demand, the tense life, the high production that they seem to feel like they have to create. And I wanted to talk about the book on posture itself that came out just because it, from 2006, because it really is very relative to what I'm doing in terms of everyday movement. And I'm doing everyday movement through Pilates and some of the foundations that Joseph Pilates is doing. But what I really love about that book of yours, because I kind of use it as a Bible. How did you perceive, how did you think about how life was going to be? Because this was 12 years ago, the new rules of posture. But how did you know back in 2006 that our life was really, did you actually see that coming? Because honestly, Mary, I never saw it coming in 2006. I didn't see it until about 2010. And maybe that's because we live in two different areas of the world. I live in a very remote area where there's mountains and there's not a lot of people. That could be one factor. But that's always been a curious thing about the new rules of posture is your book came out in 2006. Here's 2019. How did you anticipate the world changing and our bodies changing because of it?
I didn't. I had a great teacher.
Who?
And this is part of the Rolf Institute curriculum of movement education. And it has to do, his name is Hubert Godard. He was French. He is French. And he hasn't written anything. So, you know, if you look him up, you won't find very much. But he, for a few years, he taught at the Rolf Institute. We had the great honor and privilege of studying with him, some of us, the people who were interested in movement. And one of his messages was that our perceptions help shape our bodies. So how we organize ourselves in space, how we perceive the space around us, how we perceive the things and the people and the circumstances in our whole field, like I was describing the ancient people, that actually is supportive. So we become less compressed the more spatially aware we are.
Do you find that social media and technology has sometimes alters your body as well as a mover?
Of course. course.
I mean, I keep wondering how we who really
I know
believe
about
in
it. So I keep coming back to the space, you know. And so when I do move, I've just trained myself for so many decades now to be aware of the space behind my body, to be as aware of the space around me, that I am able pretty much to restore that even after a period of, looking at my phone or doing whatever thing, that you do in this life. But that idea of the importance of spatial awareness. So getting back to the mothers, if your teachers could build ways in their Pilates sessions that instead of only focusing on the movement or only focusing on the position, they could also have a secondary focus of the space around the body at the same time, because that's what we need. We need both. Okay, so there's lots of ideas about doing that in this book.
Well, that's what that's it. I'm in the middle of that book right now. I've gone through the posture book a few times, and I'm one of those teachers that have like 1,400 Post-it notes sticking out the side for reference and that kind of thing. So I want to talk about your new book. That's and you say you have, what is the title of this new book?
It's called Your Body Mandala. And the idea of a mandala, for people who don't know, a mandala is a visual image usually, and in Hindu or Buddhist traditions, that's used to focus the mind. So it'd be if you look up the word mandala on Google, you'll see, or Google Images especially, you see beautiful designs. And usually there's a central image, well, always there's a central image which represents the goal of the practice. And these are meditative practices. So the goal could be enlightenment or union with the divine or whatever the goal of that particular belief system might be. And then around the edges, top, sides, and bottom are what are called gates, avenues towards that central focus, different ways of coming into the center. So my idea is that the body is the central image. There is the body, and the whole person, really, your central presence is what I'm calling it in the book. So what you're looking for is to be able to be present in your whole self, including your body. And different ways of doing that are through these 4 avenues. One is movement, how you move, noticing it. One is noticing your sensations. Another is noticing how you express yourself. And the 4th is how you stand, how you organize yourself in space. So throughout the book, in all the various chapters, I keep coming back to how was that? How did that feel in your body? What was the sense of the movement? What was the feeling that you were expressing when you did that? So I'm trying to share basically Hubert Goddard's theory in a simple way, in a simple, practical way. And in writing this book, I got really interested in the new fascial studies and the link between fascia and biotensegrity. Biotensegrity is, tensegrity is the tensional integrity of any structure. And in the body, it has to do with the way our bones float inside our soft tissues. So they could be compressed inside our soft tissues, or if the body is spacious, then the bones and the whole body is able to move in a way that's integrated and refined and connected and free. So then I coined the idea of perceptual tensegrity, kind of jumping off from Goddard's ideas that if you connect your body in the space, so if I connect this shoulder into the corner, that changes the space of my whole shoulder girdle. So that changes then how I move. So any point on or inside your body could have a vector into the space. So you can see how that would facilitate teaching movement in a way that would cause the body to expand rather than compress. And for me, that coordination is the key to the core. The core is not just a place like the abdominal musculature. Mm-hmm. The core is the coordination of the whole system. And the best way for that coordination to happen is if everything in the body is able to be expanded so that it can more efficiently and gracefully contract and release.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that we actually put into the diastasis recti curriculum is the concept of synergistic movement and making the body work as one and finding body balance. Part of that is the gift that you're giving to the world. So do you keep into contact with, you can say his name again, the French gentleman?
Yeah, no, he's retired.
Does anybody ever retire from these fields in terms of movement and body work? I'm just surprised because
I'm about to. So.
You are, Mary.
Yeah, I haven't shared this publicly, but I'll share it with you all. I have been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, which is very ironic and weird to be a movement, guru, specialist or whatever, and turn out to be somebody who has a movement disorder. So I'm learning a ton. It's a blessing in a certain kind of way. And what I'm learning is that that high intensity cardio, which I've never done in my life except for that brief period when I was running, when I was married. I was like, oh yeah, back in those days. Anyway, an hour of cardio 3 times a week, building up to really a whole hour of cardio, which I'm not there yet, can retard or diminish or maybe even eliminate the symptoms, the tremor and the stiffness and this, irritating things that I'm experiencing. And so I've been doing that for a couple of months, and it's amazing how much less awful I feel, and less sort of like I'm disappearing, which is what Parkinson's disease does to people.
What exactly? Tell us about Parkinson's, and please educate us, because I know something of it, but what is it, and what are the symptoms of that besides the one you mentioned of trembling?
Well, it has to do with dopamine in the brain, loss of dopamine, which is, my brain science is just at the beginning because I'm suddenly interested, have a reason to be interested. But what I understand is that dopamine helps you coordinate movement. So when you've lost dopamine, so when you have Parkinson's, you've lost like 60 to 80% of the dopamine in your brain. So you start to experience movement dysfunction, and it's different for everybody. In my case, it's tremors. And I also have a dystonia in one foot, which means that foot has a constant inversion movement in the ankle. And I can't control it. I mean, I can stop it when it's happening, but then it happens again and again and again and again. So for about 2 years, I've noticed that ankle movement and kind of, tried various different things to deal with it. And now I understand that I will probably have it my whole life. So my body awareness is really an advantage because I know that I can correct it and keep myself from having cuboid syndrome, because that inversion movement knocks the cuboid out of alignment with its neighboring bones over and over. Okay, so it's like the tremor is a repetitive movement. And just like any repetitive movement that anybody does in life, that wears out the fascia. I mean, it and causes splinting in the fascia and distorts the structure. So I'm really very lucky to understand structure and movement the way I do. And let's see, so dopamine also, loss of dopamine also prevents you from initiating movement. So it makes it difficult once you've stopped, or if you're trying to go somewhere, to start again. So some of the people who are severely disabled, they'll be kind of walking along and they'll want to turn right, let's say, and they can't. They have to pause a minute and really work at it, and then they can do it. But it takes a minute. There's a shuffling gait, and there's a tendency to fold forward. It's a very particular folding. I think it happens around just behind the diaphragm. Everybody I've talked to doesn't know why, but there's a very particular Parkinsonian forward list. And then that puts everybody's neck forward, and then they begin to have trouble swallowing and speaking. So I'm very lucky in that so one other kind of Parkinson symptom is a stiffening. So the body just doesn't move. You know, it's like they take really short shuffling steps, which I do too. When I'm really tired, I shuffle around. And because I know what's going on, I know that it's my lack of dopamine. If I'm in a good enough mood, I can force myself to take big steps.
So in other words, you're saying that high cardio
can it can't cure it because there's no known cure.
But slow down the progression of it.
Slow down progression, and it can mask or make the symptoms less.
So when you ran in those 10 years where you were away, was that, was running really due to the fact that you needed a release?
No, it was the 70s. Everybody was running.
Oh, so what yes, I remember the 70s.
I had an aerobic dancing company. Remember aerobic dancing?
Yeah, I was moving with Jane Fonda.
Yeah.
And yes, that's what we were doing. We were moving with Jane Fonda, and we were doing that. What was the 80s were the step up. Yeah. But has never been much of a runner. But how do you feel about running? Do you like it?
No.
Oh.
I don't like it. It's repetitive. It's over and over in the same plane. Everything is in the going forward, you know. So ideally, if you want healthy fascia, you would run sideways and backwards, and you would dance, and you would do all different kinds of running, you know.
Pendiculation. You're the first person that introduced me to that word, and I use that with my children and my grandchildren. Thank you.
You're welcome.
One of the things
so running, I think, is I think it serves its purpose. Same thing with cycling and exercise bike. I'm about to buy an exercise bike because in the summertime, I mean, I never ever thought in my whole life that I would do that. Because even though I did cycling, I was a cyclist for a while after I was a runner. I also took up keto at a certain point and belly dancing. And I guess I wanted to say as an aside that the more different kinds of movement you can experience in your body, especially things that you wouldn't do. So another thing I did in my 40s was rock climbing. You know, it's like, well, that was an interesting period. I was scared out of my brains all the time, but I did it, you know, so I understand it. and I understand a lot of these other ways of using the body. And I think the more we as movement educators can experience our own bodies in a variety of ways, that makes us more able to compassionately and accurately read what's going on in somebody else. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think movement specialists, and I've run into all different kinds of disciplines that they have so many gifts to give. I love the fact that they understand movement and they can see in your body it's like, and they can at least direct you on the path that you need to go in
So
order
that's
to
kind of maturing that I think is important, in terms of, becoming a movement teacher, Pilates teacher, dance teacher, yoga teacher. It's not about your training. It's about your life experience. Is what gives depth to how you interact with your clients.
Mary, we really appreciate you telling us about the Parkinson's part. I'm sure that's not an easy task.
I'm not quite ready to go on the internet and go, I realize this is on the internet, but probably won't publish this podcast on my website just yet, because I feel like, it's new to me right now. It's like a couple months awareness. And I'm just starting to get a handle on how I can manage it without drugs, hopefully forever, because the drugs are horrible. And then I think maybe I can help somehow, because I think I go to a class that's a specific exercise for Parkinson's people, and most of the people in the class are way more disabled than I am. In fact, they look at me as an oddity, because, like I could jump rope, right? And they can't. And anyway, so what I see in the room with me, with these people, is no body awareness, zero. And nobody has tried, so I think, and nobody knows what will come down the pike. We do not know what's going to happen to us next. And so I feel hugely lucky and blessed that I have this resource of refined awareness of my physical being that I can apply to this particular challenge that I'm now facing. And what I see is that most people don't have that. So maybe I could write about it. Maybe I could contribute in some kind of way.
I was just getting ready to say that, because your contributions to even movement and non-movement and your body awareness, I think, is so important. It's kind of funny how sometimes things are presented in your life for a reason.
Yeah.
Like Ida, like your French gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately you have Parkinson's, but I know that you'll do everything you can to move, and to move with grace and joy. That's what you taught me. I love that part about you.
What we're doing, part of what this class involves is boxing, which
wow.
And I absolutely love it. It's my favorite part of the class. And so now, because the people in the class are so disabled and I'm moving faster than they are, I'm researching actual boxing classes in my neighborhood. And in a couple of months, that's what I'm going to do, is transition out of the Parkinson class and into just a regular boxing for ladies. And there's footwork, there's strategy, there's hitting a bag. It's just divine.
I go to a weight trainer, and there's a little boxing gym where this one gentleman in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, actually trains little people to box. And he's very, very patterned, and it's real interesting. And he actually gave me a lesson. And boy, I always thought I was very strong for my age and very well developed in my core, considering all that was going on. I could not believe the workout.
It's great.
Oh,
It's really great.
It's just a different kind of a workout altogether. But I'm going to take your advice, because what I've been trying to do is change things up every 3 months in myself. In other words, and what I'd really love to do, there's new research out on aging in terms of dancing and providing dancing and different kinds of dancing with different kinds of rhythm, which makes complete sense to me. That's what I want to do next. Learn how to tango, learn how to salsa.
Absolutely. You should do that.
And it's a lovely little piece of research that I read. And I mean, I can see myself doing that. I'm approaching retirement age, and I have just begun. So we really wish, I hope that this does not anchor you, Mary. I can't imagine you ever being anchored.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I have to go slower. I can't, stress aggravates the symptoms.
That
do as many things. I just, so I'm going to teach in Europe in September. I'm not sure how that's going to go, but I didn't want to turn them down.
And you have workshops. I know you have one in June on the shoulder.
Oh yeah, that's in Seattle. It's a shoulder girdle workshop. It's 3 days. It's open. So on my website, healyourposture.com, there's a link to sign up for that class if anybody, and it's open to Pilates instructors.
Well, when I surveyed my Restoring Core tribe, we've been doing shoulder movements galore in that group because, we're all 60s and 70s, most of us, some 50s, and from the effects of sitting and everybody's living in an internal world and non-movement, we've been doing a lot of shoulders. And guess where I am in June? I'll be in Seattle.
You should come.
I will try. I would love just to work with you and to see your work and to be in the same room. But I know in July there's one, I want to say the articulation spine, one in July.
That's very short. It's here in Los Angeles. It's 2 afternoons, so I think it's a total of 5 hours over the two afternoons on a weekend. Yeah, so that's at a Yoga Lotus studio. Local Yodas, whatever, you know what I mean. And yeah, and then if you want to go to Milan or Warsaw.
Whoa, I would love to go to Milan. You might convince me there.
Yeah.
But
anyway, this shoulder girdle workshop is really, it's about shoulder structure, but it's also the relationship of the shoulders to the spine. And by spine, I mean everything, including the head. And also the relationship of the shoulders to self-expression, because so much of what's going on in our shoulders has to do with the burdens we carry and the protections we have patterned around our hearts.
Oh, yeah. How true. Maybe you can understand why everybody complains about shoulders in Pilates, and I'm sure in your field as well.
Yeah.
So Mary, what's one thing you can leave with us today how about posture? What's one thing that you can pass on to the world about posture that might help someone?
Posture isn't a position. Posture is a point of view. So we all know how we feel when we're comfortable, when we're in an environment where we feel supported and happy and loved. That's good posture. Yeah.
Those are beautiful words. Thank you.
Yeah. I'd rather not talk about, different things to feel. But that's true, don't you think? I mean,
absolutely.
Anytime you're in a grumpy mood, your posture sucks. And then if you're in that mood, or you're uptight, or you're worried, or you're focused on tomorrow's project or whatever it is, and then you go to your workout. You're working out from that posture.
Good point.
So in a way, you're just solidifying your solidity. But if you can somehow find your happiness and then go work out, even if after the workout you have to go back to being mad or sad or grumpy or whatever, that's fine. But try to cultivate happiness and openness when you're working out so that your body will be as spacious as possible so that you will then move your fascia and your muscles in a way that's the most advantageous. Yeah, that's pretty good.
That was beautiful. Mary, we wish you the best of luck, and I'm going to call on you again in the future. I love to listen to you. You remind me that there's just hope in the world, and that we all need to take a deep breath and enjoy our bodies more and enjoy one another. Thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome. I enjoyed talking to you. All of
Thanks.
you.
And you know, they're going to hear this only in podcast form, but some of the teachers that have been in our supportive groups have spoken highly of your contribution towards that curriculum, and they will love this one as well. So
yeah, so is it a video podcast or just
no, it will be audio podcast only.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm going to send you a couple of my first two. This is just an 11-day-old baby of mine.
Oh, well, congratulations.
Well, thank you. You know what? The one thing there's two things, well, actually three things that I love doing, and that's being a mom, but I love to write so much. And this gives me the opportunity to do so. And podcast gives me the opportunity to possibly educate little, talk about movement, talk about awareness. And so those things are really important. And it's part of what creating change is all about. Because it's definitely, it's really obvious to me, we need to make some changes in our world just in order to feel better and to look better and to be able to move more. But thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And Godspeed on your journey here. It's a new journey, but everything's a chapter.
I'd also like to just say that I self-published my most recent book. Your Body Mandala is produced entirely by me with the help of a whole lot of people. But what that means is that I don't have the marketing machine of a publishing company. You know, so my marketing is really social media. So I would like to request that if anybody has read it and likes it, hopefully, or finds it useful or helpful or whatever, that you put a brief endorsement on the Amazon page, because that helps sell books and it helps other people know about it.
And was that a hard process, publishing it yourself?
You don't want to know.
Okay. Are we saying that's creating tension in your body? I'm actually learning how to do the podcasting and the editing myself too, and that has been quite the journey. I've had to take a lot of deep breaths. But I understand your journey and having to publish that. But I will put at the end of the show notes, I'm going to put your contact information, the best way to reach you, and the name of your book, just so our students know. But thanks, Ray.
There's one also really nice thing is my Instagram. I don't know, have you seen?
I have seen you. I was surprised you were on it. I don't know why I should be surprised, and you're on Twitter.
Well, I don't go on Twitter. I just repost the Instagram stuff onto Twitter. So, you know.
That's all right, though. That's a beginning. It's a different group of people, and visibility is important, and awareness is the vital thing that we're trying to web out there. So I think social media, there are some things that are good in terms of visibility and getting awareness out. That's a big deal, and I think it's very important. So, all right. Mary, be safe, and we will talk to you soon.
Blessings on your new endeavor.
I'm excited. You too.
Great.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Until next time, take time for you.